Perhaps the most important aspect of the astronomical teaching of Quran in respect of scientific matters. But the first point I wish to make tonight in respect of the creation of the heaven and earth, which we've been discussing since last night, is this. In Surah Ibrahim, chapter 14, verse 33, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ دَائِبَيْنِ وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ. That word دَائِبَيْنِ is the word I really want to concentrate on, because the rest of the words we've already considered. In particular, سَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ, and that is a greatest favor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done to us, to say that He has subjected the moon for our comforts. He has subjected the sun for our convenience. He has subjected the stars. We haven't seen the stars, but I will point out even that verse in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this. But what is of significance in this verse and of great importance is the word daibain, which means they are consciously engaged. They are diligently pursuing their courses, both the sun and the moon. Because in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only talks of those two. سَخَّرَ لَكُمُ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ. Those two, He says, are daibain. They are diligent, they are conscientious in the discharge of their duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah finishes that particular ayah saying, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ, and I have made the day and night subservient to you, subservient to us, as though we can control the day and night. But He has so controlled them for us that it appears that they are entirely for our convenience. And we've already discussed this. I asked you to imagine how it would be like if it's day all day and if it's night all night. Those living at the pole, the North Pole and South Pole, experience that situation. But even they have only 6 months of day and 6 months of night. It is not continuous life of darkness or a continuous life of light, which will be intolerable for human existence. However, that word daibain, which Allah uses, meaning that they are diligent, shows that this creation is not accidental. Shows this creation did not come about by itself. It proves that there is a certain definite organization by which it is created, and it is created for a purpose, and that purpose is being diligently served. There is no question of diligence if they are created in vain. But that word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses there shows that there is a purpose behind them. The purpose of creation we've already seen is worship of Allah. So they too are worshipping Allah, and they are worshipping Allah in two ways. The general meaning given is that in the sense that they are obeying the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept for them. For example, the earth taking 365 days to revolve around the sun taking exactly the definite time to go around its orbit, and taking exactly the same time to go around, rotating on its own axis, and to go around revolving around the star around which the sun is moving. All that, of course, is obedience to Allah. Allah has geared it to that, and the sun sticking to that agenda, and the moon sticking to that agenda unfailingly. And if the scientists are right, for billions of years, is indeed daibain, and that is the worship of Allah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Bani Israel says that there is nothing on earth, nothing at all. وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُم. There is nothing, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ, nothing in the creation of Allah at all, except that إِلَّا, it is taking out tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing that does not worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, except وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُم. It is except that you are not able to hear the tasbih of the moon. make tasbih. And sometimes, I'm sure, particularly you people living around Bandra, with the seaside next to you, perhaps even in Mumbai, but more in smaller places like this, and in places where it is quiet, one can be on the shore, and the movements of the trees sometimes make you feel that they are in the course of worship. We could see this in Zanzibar. There was a special place where you go in the evening and you literally feel that the plants are in the course of worship. You can literally see them singing songs of praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that, of course, is a rare incident. Allah Ta'ala, generally speaking, in Surah Bani Israel says, you cannot hear that they are worshipping, but they all are worshipping. And in this particular ayah, reference is to the worship of the sun and the moon, that they too are worshipping Allah. That is an important aspect of our study, because it shows that creation is not in vain. The creation has a purpose, and if the creation has a purpose, that negatives it having been created by sheer chance, as the scientist says. It could not have been created by sheer chance, particularly with the organization that it has. And in the next ayah, Allah that I wanted to put across to you is, and that is in chapter 36, this is Yasin then, chapter verse 39, وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلْ حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. I promised that I would deal with this ayah last night, the night before, but we couldn't reach it. And I said that we will deal with it hurriedly, but we must deal with it just in case when we discuss Yasin, there were people present tonight who were not present then. The ayah is وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلْ حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. And the moon has its own sad course. Now that is where, as I said in the very first night, this is where the Holy Quran differs drastically from the scientific theories and hypotheses. Because as I said, what science puts forward is a theory. It is a hypothesis which is one way one day, another way another day, as research progresses. But the word of Allah given 14 centuries ago is as dogmatic as it when it was revealed as it is today. And وَلَا تُبَدِّلُوا لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا. You will not see that in the sunnah of Allah, in the setup, if you like, in the setup of Allah, there is any change at all. وَلَا تَجِدُ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا. You will not find that in the setup, in the organization of Allah, that there will be any change at all. If the sun rises from the east, it will continue rising to the day of judgment. And if it sets in the west, so it will continue. Because the motions that He has set of the earth, the sun and the moon are set motions which are to be repeated without failure to the day of judgment. So that qaddarna, we have ordained it. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلْ. We have set out definite stations, definite stages for the qamar. حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ, until it turns back to the shape of a shriveled branch of a palm. That is the crescent. The crescent that we ultimately see. The shape of a shriveled branch of a palm. And this is something that is absolutely fantastic, because we can watch it, we can see it. Quran, I say in the first sitting, is a book which different people will read differently, but nobody will read it without benefiting from it. Nobody will read it without gaining knowledge from it, of some sort or the other. The ordinary man like me will read it and obtain superficial knowledge. The alim, the scholar, will read and see the inner depth of things. And that is exactly the situation with the Holy Book. Ayats were created so that, and revealed, so that the man to whom it was immediately revealed should be able to understand and comprehend what is being said in the Quran. Of course, there are inner depths which we understand only today. And I have labored that point yesterday on how the sun is moving. When I was told that the sun was stationary and the sun is moving, the question we are asked is, the Quran is created for eternity. If the Quran was not created only for the people of that time, so why examples of the people of that time? And the answer to that is, the examples of the people of that time is, it is no use Allah catering for us without catering for those to whom it was immediately revealed. They had to understand what was being revealed, because if they did not understand, how do they receive the Quran? And whilst the Holy Prophet was, peace be upon him and his progeny, who transmitted the Quran to them, it is they who transmitted the Quran to us. And they would not have taken the care to transmit it to us if they did not comprehend it first. And hence, whilst Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have said numerous things, the billions of stars I was talking about last night are not mentioned in that way. We will touch on stars tonight on Celestial Organization, inshallah, because my effort is to speed up and complete the Celestial Organization tonight, so that tomorrow night we come back to Earth. Flying in the heavens all the time will not do us good. We've got to come down to Earth. And tomorrow night the effort is to come down to Earth for 2 nights consecutively, and then, as you've seen the program, move to plants and animals before we come to our own birth. How are we born? What does Quran say about our birth? And what does the scientists say about our birth? And how absolutely minutely accurate, I do not even say accurate, I say minutely accurate Quran is in describing the various processes that the baby undergoes until the baby is born. But inshallah, if Allah wills, we will try and stick to that program. But for the moment, it is the Qamar that we are talking about, the moon. And Allah says, I have kept stations for it, I have kept stages for it. Manazil. And one word that the Arab of the time knew was manzil, because when he traveled, he had to make stops. And those stops in Arabic were called manzils. I think they are also called manzil in Urdu. And the plural is manazil, that is the word there. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ manazil. Allah has kept stations for it. And it is so beautiful that you can see it. You don't need your watch then. You can look at the moon and say, tonight is the 14th eve of the month, and now it is midnight, or now it is 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. And those who have the eyes to see, the problem with you and I is that our eyes can only read the watch or the clock. And once that is missing, we don't know what the time is. We are absolutely lost. The Arab of that time did not have a watch. He did not use a clock. He looked at the sun and said, it is now midday, and I will say my noon prayers. He looked at the sun and said, it's Asr. He looked at the sun and said, this is Maghrib. He looked at the sun and even spoke of the time between Asr and Maghrib. He was able to say, Asr has passed, Maghrib has not come in. This is now a time, this is 5 p.m. now, or 5:30 p.m. He was able to assess, and we will come to the stars in a few minutes, to see how the stars guided man. So, those manazil that are kept by the moon, and it is absolutely fantastic. Actually, even you and I use this process. We might go to Karbala, and may Allah will that we all go to Karbala as soon as possible. We haven't been there for a while, and it's not easy, but may Allah make it easy and possible for us to get to Karbala. But one could be in Karbala and not meeting somebody one knows, and one wants to know, when is the night of Masusi, for example Arafah, or for example Ashura? When will the Ashura night be that I observe? And there is nobody to tell him. We still look at the moon and say, look, that doesn't look like the moon of the 9th eve. And so tomorrow might not be the eve of Ashura. Now, the question I ask the scientist is, the atheist scientist, the scientist who believes is of course more learned than we are, both in faith and in knowledge. But the atheist scientist I ask is, how does this come about? Is this an accident? Do you still call it a matter of chance that every month for billions of years, on the 9th eve, the moon will have the shape that it has, and it is lowered down the first 14 nights, the first 12 nights. It takes a full form. 14th night, it is full moon every month without failure. And this is one servant of yours who does not fail in his duties, whatever else your accountants or your computers might do for you. This is because it is created by He who is perfect. And the computer has not been created by He who is perfect. And these huge binoculars and huge satellites from which the scientist looks at the moon also are created by man, and they fail. And the spacecrafts also collapse. But the moon is created by He who is perfect. So we believe, and we ask him who does not believe, how can he justify that perfection of the moon except on the basis that it is created by someone who is perfect? Well, then the shape changes, and you find that the moon is on the other side, and you are able to see that, right, if that is how the moon is, then the middle of the month has passed, and we are over with it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it passes through all these stages, week after week, until حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ, and reaches that level of a crescent, and one knows a new month has started. Now this alone establishes not only the existence of Allah, but the creation of the heavens by Allah, and creation in perfect shape and form. Well, that's then for that's then for the moon. Likewise for the sun. Likewise for the sun. The sand clock came centuries later. What man worked on for ages was just the sun. Indeed, man is able to say that the sun has not risen, but is able to say that it is Fajr now. An hour and a half before sunrise, man is able to say it's Fajr, I can recite my Fajr namaz. Now isn't that glory to God? Isn't that sufficient reason to stand up and say Allahu Akbar? Because who can be greater than Him? That twilight, leave alone the Shams and the Qamar, the twilight that they produce is so effective in the creation of the heaven. And that twilight is so absolutely beautiful. It is beautiful at dawn, it is beautiful at dusk. Except that beautiful things do not last forever. Allah has kept that twilight within limited time. Minutes only before the sunset, minutes only after the sunset. And that is the glory of the creation of Allah. In Surah Al-Nahl, in verse 12, Allah says, وَسَخَّرَ لَكُمُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ وَالنُّجُومَ. And the stars also now are added. At first it was the Shams, Qamar, Layl and Nahar, now Nujum, and the stars also. مُسَخَّرَاتٌ بِأَمْرِهِ. And they all are subservient to you, to mankind, on the command of Allah. That again is a favor from Allah to us. And then the caustic words from Allah, which is why we study Quran. We do not study only for scientific knowledge. That is a byproduct for us. Scientific knowledge we get from Quran is purely byproduct of our study of Quran. But our study of Quran are for the words, for example, that follow, in which Allah says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. And in this, that the sun should be subservient to you, the moon, the day, the night, and the stars should be subservient to you, these are ayat of Allah, these are signs of Allah, these are signs by which you can recognize Allah and come to know Allah, and find Him worthy of worship. Hence this entire mechanism, and hence the importance of us sitting here tonight, and at least for these 10 nights, and studying the celestial organization, the other creations of Allah, so that we can come to know Him that little bit better. Because as I said the other night, we cannot respect each other unless we come to know each other. That is the way Allah has kept it. And He says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ, for a community that has sense, that has common sense. I dare say, those who are not able to see this apparent truth do not even have senses. Do not even have senses, and they can call themselves professors. I have no objection what they call themselves. But the reality is that if they cannot see this obvious truth, then where is the sense? And when Allah says that even the stars are subservient, He explains it better in Surah Al-An'am. In verse 97, this is chapter 6, verse 97, he says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ النُّجُومِ, and Allah has created stars for you, لِتَهْتَدُوا بِهَا, so that you obtain guidance from them. فِي ظُلُمَاتِ الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ, you obtain guidance, you obtain light from darkness of the land and the sea. بَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ, darkness of land. It can be dark at night and you do not see. Or you may be in the waters, in the sea, bahr. And then the stars guide you. قَدْ فَضَّلْنَا الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ, and we have detailed قَدْ فَصَّلْنَا الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ, we have detailed the signs for the people who know. Now it is people who know. Because people who do not know will get no guidance from the stars. A professor, he could be a professor of orthopedics, he could be a barrister of high evidence, but if he has no knowledge of stars at all, and he looks at the sky, what does he think? But those who know, particularly the mariners, they are able to see the Milky Way, and they are able to see that once that star is born, once that star has risen, then this is the time and that is the direction in which I will sail my boat. That is a concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept in days when the compasses were not available, when the maps were not available, and yet the ships sailed. Surah Yasin talks about the sailing of the ships. In those days, 14 centuries ago, how did they sail without these compasses and maps? Indeed, the answer then is that they did so by virtue of the stars. They looked at the stars and the stars guided them. Likewise, they guide them during the day. Ask that Arab in the desert. And hence this example for that Arab in the desert who is traveling at night. And they travel at night because during the day it is too hot to travel. They travel on a camel at night. How do they find their way? These are uncharted deserts and it's sand all along. They do not look on the ground to find their path. They look at the sky. And glory to Allah that He keeps the sky as the compass for the earth. You look at the sky to find your path on the earth. Who else could have created an organization of that nature? And they find their paths. The disagreement is, which is the star? Is that star with the tail, or is it the star with a longer tail? And they know it all. And if I may carry that example a step further, although it is not pertinent to this particular ayah we are discussing, exactly the same is the situation with pilots. I do not know if you have had the experience, as alhamdulillah I have had, of being in a plane in which you suddenly find that the compass is not working. I don't know if you've had that experience. It's a wonderful experience. And the captain then says, the compass now is not working. I don't know where I am. And so I said, well, how will you find your way? He said, the clouds. I said, the clouds? He says, yes, you will study the clouds. And he maneuvers, he says, that is the cloud I can identify. Now, but that cloud has electricity in it. If I get into it, we could be burnt. He goes around. And then he goes to another place and says, that has electricity. When there are clouds of electricity in one place and clouds of electricity on the other, the path in between is the path that will lead me to Dar es Salaam. So I will follow that path. And we followed that path for a good while until we got help from a Boeing which was flying from South Africa, from Joburg to London. And on the way we were able, at least the radio started working once we cleared that area, and we were able to contact him and say, look, my compass is not working, guide me through. And we were guided by that jumbo jet onto the path. But until then the clouds provided the answer. Again, to find path. This is a fantastic phenomena that only Allah could have created. And I asked the captain this, that would this be possible if there was just a human creation? To be able to make out even clouds, and we will come to clouds inshallah. Tomorrow night we will discuss a little about clouds, if not much. That creation of that nature by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed, is for those who know. And that is why you find that in the previous ayah that I cited from Surah An-Nahl, it says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْقِلُونَ. These are signs for a community, for people who have sense, and everybody has sense. So nobody has an excuse of not following that particular verse. But this last one will do that. That is the Surah Al-An'am. In that particular one, Allah says, قَدْ فَصَّلْنَا الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. I have detailed and explained these verses for those who have knowledge. It is those who have knowledge of the stars who can be guided by the stars, and those who have knowledge about the clouds who can be guided by the clouds. And another ayah in which Allah says, وَعَلَامَاتٍ وَبِالنَّجْمِ هُمْ يَهْتَدُونَ. I have created landmarks, just like clouds that I just talked about, and other landmarks. وَبِالنُّجُومِ وَبِالنَّجْمِ. Again, plural of the stars. And by the stars, I have created men, I have created means. Whom yahtadun, I have created the means by which they can be guided. Men can be guided. And it is this guidance that they give to us, is how they are sakhara lakum, that they are subservient to us. If those stars, mind you, if those stars then went astray, for example, those stars did not keep to the angle at which they ought to be, then the mariner who is looking at that star and is following the star would also go astray. But in keeping to that accurate angle, that star is also serving the mariner, is subservient to the needs and the requirements of this particular sailor who finds his path, or that desert traveler who finds his path by following the stars. An organization which I say is impossible without Allah having created it with His perfection. And then lastly, again a spiritual point that I want to make from that ayah, that's the only reason why I cite it, and it is, he says, هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ الشَّمْسَ ضِيَاءً. He is the one who made the sun shining. Now we looked at that. Zihaja was the word that was used in that particular ayah. Here he says he made the shams shining. Ziya wal qamara nura. And he made moon a light. وَقَدَّرَهُ مَنَازِلَ لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابِ. And he has kept stages for them, manazil for them, as we've just seen, so that you can know عَدَدَ السِّنِينَ, you can know how many years have passed. When calendars did not exist, people relied on such information from the moon and the sun. And by that information were able to work out their own calendar and to know how many years have passed. Well, hisab, and to be able to make their reckoning of the time, whether it is day or night or otherwise. But the point I wanted quickly to make here was, again, to show you the difference between Shams is called the Diya'a, it is shining, and Qamar, Nura, it is only providing light, it is only shedding light on earth. That is all that it does. Today we know why this difference. And as I said, I think a couple of nights back, the scriptures and even the Old Testament does not make this difference. It calls both of them lights, but both of them are not light. One is shining by itself because it produces light, it manufactures light itself through its internal combustion. Moon does not produce light, it reflects the light from the sun. This delicate difference between the sun and the moon is reflected even in the phraseology of Quran. But the main reason why I cited this ayah is it says, مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ ذَلِكَ, but Allah has not created this إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ, except that He has created it for the truth. يُفَصِّلُ الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَعْلَمُونَ. I have manifested, I've elaborated these signs for the community that has knowledge. Well, all these are created, all these ayats are created. خَلَقَ اللَّهُ ذَلِكَ, Allah has created all this. إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ, مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ ذَلِكَ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ, Allah has not created all this إِلَّا for haqq, and haqq is He. And what is that haqq then? That haqq is the worship of Allah. That we worship Him after all that He has created. And the great thing is, we worship Him by His benevolence, and yet He rewards us for worship. This is a generosity that can only come from Allah. Well, there we are then. That is how He has created the heavens and the earth. And not only created them for scientific purposes, not only created them so that they serve us, but created them bil haqq. And this is why I wanted to keep it as the last verse that I discussed in the process of discussing the creation of the earth and the moon, and to point out that all this creation is so that we see the truth, and the truth really is that there is no Allah except God. The truth is La ilaha illallah, and indeed that La ilaha illallah cannot be followed, cannot be comprehended unless we say Muhammadun Rasulullah. And we say that Muhammadun Rasulullah cannot also be comprehended unless we say Aliyun Waliyullah. This then leads me finally to the stars, because we haven't discussed the stars so far. Well, the word star, Najm, appears in the Holy Book 13 times. And I do not propose to take you through all of them. I propose to cite only one ayah in respect of the stars, because I think we have discussed the stars in context of the creations of heaven, in at least setting out to you, by the way, but it formed the substratum of the subject, that these creations are creations of Allah for a purpose, and we have seen how they are created and in what large numbers they are created. And we will see more of that tonight when we discuss the galaxies that have been organized by Allah. But the leading ayah is in Surah Al-Tariq, verses 1 to 3. And Allah there swears by the stars. He says, وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ, by the sky and the night visitor. And who is the night visitor? It is the stars. It is the stars. It is when the stars start twinkling, we know it really is night. And when the stars disappear, we know it is Fajr. We know that it is Fajr now, and it's time for Salah. It is a fantastic setup. But what is even greater than it being fantastic is that it is unfailing. It is a totally unfailing setup, which is why I say only Allah has created it. He says, وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ, by the sky and the night visitor. And then he says, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الطَّارِقِ, but what have you understood by the night visitor? When Allah uses a concept which has inner, deeper meanings, He questions the Holy Prophet immediately, what have you understood? And the best example I can give you of that is in Surah Qadr, when we say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, wa ma adraka ma laylatul qadr. Allah says, I have revealed the Holy Quran. The other night when we were talking of the Holy Quran, one thing the clock did not allow me to do is to show the various stages. But there are 6 stages. I did not manage to do that night. I do not see that I can do it tonight. But one of the stages is that the Quran is revealed to Allah in its totality on that Laylatul Qadr. And then He transmits the Quran to us verse by verse. But the initial revelation is in its totality. But how is Allah to explain all that? And so He says, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ فِي لَيْلَةِ الْقَدْرِ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا لَيْلَةُ الْقَدْرِ. What have you understood by Laylatul Qadr? He explains it saying what? Saying, Laylatul Qadr khayrun min alfi shahr. That Laylatul Qadr is superior to 1,000 months. But I say, Ya Allah, what have I understood by that? By you saying that it is it is only 24 hours, only 12 hours at the most that night. Oh, if it's in the pole, well, it could be one night, full night, 24 hours, but no more than that. It cannot compare with 1,000 months. It says خَيْرٌ مِنْ أَلْفِ شَهْرٍ. And then the limited explanation is تَنَزَّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالرُّوحُ فِيهَا بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِمْ مِنْ كُلِّ أَمْرٍ سَلَامٌ هِيَ حَتَّى مَطْلَعِ الْفَجْرِ. That is the only explanation one gets. So the moment we see this ma adraka, we know that there is inner meaning, and we've got to go to the tafasir, we've got to go to the commentaries that then guide us to its true meaning. So the najm is explained. It says وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا طَارِقٌ. What have you understood by the night visitor? And then it says النَّجْمُ الثَّاقِبُ, the star of piercing brightness. So you can see there are stars and stars. Now that organization of different stars is what makes it proof that this organization is a divine organization. And he says there is that star which is of piercing brightness. The nearest the scientist has come to say is that maybe it is the shooting star that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. But he's talking beyond the shooting star. It is the star of piercing brightness. We know another entity as An-Najm al-Thaqib, and that is the 12th Imam, Ajjalallahu Farajahu. Because when darkness of injustice and inequity will have enveloped the whole world, and he will indeed appear as a piercing, a star of piercing brightness that will pervade the whole world. But indeed, there are stars of such brightness, it is said, لَلشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَن تُدْرِقَ الْقَمَرَ وَلَلَّيْلُ سَابِقُ النَّهَارِ وَكُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. Great ayah that subhanahu wa ta'ala has. And emerges at a time when the world had not even woken up to these realities. The world then thought, as I've already discussed and I will not take your time, that it is the sun that moves around the earth. And it is the moon that moves around, creating these various stations that we examine. That is what the earth believed then. Quran was revolutionizing the thought, and man was not able to keep pace with the Holy Quran, and read it as a parrot without seeing the inner meanings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was trying to explain. One person who did lecture on them was Imam Ja'far Sadiq salawatullahi wa sallam. I don't know if many of you attended those sittings we had in this very hall on Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam, but I took occasion to spend time on the scientific teachings of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and dealt with this particular ayah. Because as I said, it was unknown at that point in time. Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَلشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَن تُدْرِقَ الْقَمَرَ. The sun is not allowed to overtake the moon. So that the day remains the day and the night remains the night. This organization, this celestial organization that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, He not only created it, as we discussed about the Holy Quran, He not only created it, but He preserved it. And He preserved it with His own might. This gravitational pull that we are talking about is not our creation. It was His creation, and the pull that He gives, the pull, for example, that the sun has of keeping all these objects that are in motion, and this centripetal force, and the analogous forces to it, all operate in their own way, so that all these orbits remain in function, which could not have occurred, I say, without a proper organization by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, I do not allow that the sun, even if it is more powerful, even if it is bigger than the moon, to overtake the moon. It will keep to its timing, and the moon will keep to its own timing, and all will follow that particular program that I have made. لَلشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَن تُدْرِقَ الْقَمَرَ وَلَلَّيْلُ سَابِقُ النَّهَارِ. Now you how deep Quran is and how accurate Quran is. This is what the scientist finds when he starts to study Quran. He finds that the propositions in Quran are so scientifically accurate by the criterion of the extent of scientific knowledge of today. Because having dealt with Shams and Qamar, Allah Ta'ala then says Layl wal Nahar, because Layl and Nahar has nothing to do with Shams and Qamar. Layl and Nahar has to do only with the rotation of the earth. And indeed, it is the rotation of the earth that determines night and day. When the earth rotates, and the part of it that faces the sun has the day, because it has the light of the sun. When it rotates round, and the part that had the sun now moves behind, and the part that was night comes over, that part then gets the day, because it faces the sun. And there's the brightness of the sun. Simple principles today, but at that time they were totally unknown. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala separates the concept of the Shams and Qamar from Layl and Nahar, saying to us, as it were, that these two are separate concepts and do not mix them. And as the earth rotates on its axis within 24 hours, making its rotation within 24 hours, the sun rotates on its axis too, but the sun takes 25 days to make one rotation, which the earth makes in 24 hours, because it is so huge. However, that mechanism that Allah has kept, He says, He does not allow one to outstrip the other. They must follow their timing, and they must keep to that program, so that everybody is behaving in a way in which there is order. And there is total organization which is followed to its peak. And that organization is an organization of this world. I sometimes sit to wonder if this is how Allah has created this world with such beautiful organization. What will the Jannah be like? What will be the organization there? That principle, we are told, that you desire something and you get it, must be true. Must then be true. And it must be so easy, because it must all have been so organized in such perfect way that everybody is satisfied to the sense of perfection. And they get exactly what they are asking for. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, لَلشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا تُدْرِكَ الْقَمَرَ وَلَلَّيْلُ سَابِقُ النَّهَارِ وَكُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. And each of them is swimming, as it were, swimming in its own orbit. Why does Allah use the word swimming? And actually that translation is inaccurate. The root yasbahun, the root word is sabaha. Sabaha then becomes the root word from yasbahun. That word sabaha, what does it really mean? And the root meaning of that word in Arabic, it means moving by its own motion. So when you are swimming in water, you are moving as you swim, but you move by your own motion. When you are walking, you are moving, but you are walking with your own legs by your own motion. That is also sabaha. But usually it is used for swimming, because that is how the Arabs express that word, and hence it was translated like that. But in essence it means it moves by its own motion. There is no propeller therefore propelling it. And so it says that these suns, and the sun and the moon, and the day and the night, وَكُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. And all of them, that word falak, كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ, that word falak implies that Allah is saying that the world is round. So you can see even that concept of the world being round is in Quran, and was in Quran 10 centuries before Galileo said it. When he said it, he was to be hanged, do you remember? He was told, don't talk rubbish, the world is flat. And don't speak this rubbish of the world being round. It's not round, it's flat. And if you continue to say it's round, we'll hang you. This is what the civilized people told Galileo. Quran said 10 centuries before that, 14 centuries before today, that the world was round. It says, كُلٌّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. And they all have their own orbits, and are moving on their own motion. in these orbits. Again, establishing the huge divine celestial organization. And you find that that is exactly the case with the orbit of the moon. And we know this. The moon takes 29 and a half days. This is why we have some lunar months of 29 days, some of 30 days. Because the moon takes 29 and a half days to go round the earth. That is when it finishes its revolution round the earth. That is the orbit that has been laid for it. We will inshallah, not tomorrow night but the night after as planned, discuss what is the effect of this. What is the effect of this? Moon is at its exact distance from the earth, and it's been kept at that distance for again scientific reasons. That distance that it has from the earth today is again for scientific reasons, and we shall discuss this when we discuss tides 2 nights later, how tides in the seas are formed, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the scientific principles of the formation of tides. Well, so that organization in the orbit of the moon is exactly 29 and a half days, and Allah says the Shams is not allowed to overtake it, nor is the Qamar allowed to interfere with it. Likewise, there is the sun's orbit. And the sun's orbit is absolutely fantastic, because as I said, the sun moves round another sun, huge sun. But that sun, that solar system does not have only 8 or 10 planets as our solar system has. And hence, our solar system is a very small solar system compared to the other solar systems that exist. And hence I was pointing out to you the other night that when Allah says Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, He talks about Alameen. He's not talking about one Alam, He's not talking about one universe, He's talking about universes in plurality. And those other universes put our universe to shame, because we are dwarfs compared to those tall ones. Indeed, in that celestial organization, the sun is nowhere in the near the center where the star is, which is the center of this galaxy. It is right at the end of the disk. It is in the form of a disk, and our sun is right at the end of the disk. And the sun takes 250 million years. 250 million years to make one revolution. The earth takes 365 days, as you know, and a quarter. This is why every 4 years we have a leap year to add a year. And that is because of the elliptical shape of the earth, which gives us the North Pole and the South Pole. But this sun, huge as it is, going round that huge orbit takes 250 million years. But it is not strolling, it is really running. Despite that, it takes that long, and it goes at the speed of 150 miles per second. Can you imagine? That is the speed at which the sun is moving on its orbit compared to the speed at which the earth takes. It takes 25 days to revolve on its own axis. What the earth takes 1 day, the sun takes 25 days. And again, therefore, the sun does exactly what our earth does. So that the picture, as I drew it the other day, was that all these planets go around the sun, and as they go around the sun taking all its planets is going round another huge sun. And at the same time, the sun is revolving on its own axis and takes 25 days to revolve on its axis, covering about 15 miles per second. So you can see how colossal the celestial organization is, which I dare say you must be convinced cannot come about either by chance or by itself or in any other way except by creation of Allah. But the fantastic thing about all this is that at the time when Quran says this, the Pythagoreans were saying that the sun was stationary. But I'm not even talking to you about what the Pythagoreans were saying 14 centuries ago. I've just told you my own story. What I was told only 50 years ago that the sun was stationary. And Quran had 14 centuries ago said that the sun is moving, which we have come to know today. And we have come to know today all this, more particularly because of our spaceship landing on the moon. When the spaceship landed on the moon, they were able to take clear pictures. They were able to take the pictures of the sun. And they were able to see the sun rotating on its axis. They did not come to believe this because Quran said so. Because they, when they landed, were able to see this themselves. And they have, of course, photographs of this. It's all video. And they were able to see that the earth is rotating on its axis. And that is when, in 1961, it was conclusively proved that the earth rotates on its axis, when Quran said this 14 centuries ago. There must be some sense of justice. And this is why I thought we have got to sit and talk about these things. We have got to propagate these things. That Quran has said this centuries ago, when man was not even aware of it. And hence it must be the word of God. And hence there is no human explanation for the Holy Quran. No human explanation at all. It can only be the divine word of Allah. So they saw the earth moving, they saw the earth not only rotating on its axis, but they were able to see the sun, the earth revolving around the sun. It is when you are outside the earth that you can actually see the earth and see what it is doing. And that is the conquest of the space that resulted in this knowledge. Who knows? Who knows? But I'm entitled to ask you this hypothetical question. Isn't it the case, perhaps, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave these scientists the opportunity and provided them the means to get to the moon only so that the Quran is proved right? Because that today is a fundamental, that truth became a fundamental truth, fundamental proof to the veracity and integrity and authenticity of the Holy Book. And that was the way in which Allah gives hidayah. He gives guidance to those who have ilm, to those who have knowledge, so that they can come to the right path. And indeed, that has been the course of even those who are representatives of Allah on earth. And the best example of that, of course, is Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Because the sacrifices he made to ensure that man comes to guidance are absolutely colossal and unparalleled in the annals of history. What other faith, what other school of thought, what other parallel in history can be drawn with what happened in Karbala? And indeed, as you know, when the Kufians came round to Imam Hussain alayhi salam asking for guidance, he did not shrink. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew the Kufians are not trustworthy. And indeed, Abdullah bin Umar came to Imam Hussain alayhi salam and said, "Ya Hussain, don't go to Kufa. These Kufians are totally unworthy." Ibn Abbas came to him and said, "Don't go to them. They are unreliable people, these Kufians. They always cause treachery." And hence, there was all discouragement from all sides. Abdullah bin Ja'far said exactly that to Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Imam Hussain alayhi salam's answer is only one. They have written to me letters. These are not words. 35,000 letters with me, in which they all say that they want me to go there to give them guidance. And they say that maybe if I go to them, they will come to the right path. How can I shudder? How can I shrink from that duty of going there and giving them guidance in case they can see the truth in the creation of Allah and in the divinity of Allah? And he proceeded there, but he took his precaution. That before he proceeded there, as you know, he sent an ambassador in Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil. He sent that ambassador, but when he sent that ambassador with two children, Muhammad and Ibrahim, as you know, 9 years, 10 years old, 8 years old children. He sent those with him, but he sent them with Muslim, so that the world can know that Muslim was not sent to Kufa to fight the Kufians. but only to give guidance to the Kufians so that they come to the correct path. Charles Dickens, when recently in history he was asked about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he said, no, I have no doubt that Hussein was on the right and Yazid was on the wrong. And when in that press conference he was pressed to say why, he said because Hussein did not go to Karbala without taking his family. He took his wives, he took his sisters, he took his daughters, he took the women with him as well. What person who goes out to fight for a country, what person who goes to fight for a princehood, what person who goes out to fight for worldly gains takes women's wives and sisters along with him? And that to him was a conclusive answer. And that is what Imam Hussein alayhi salam did with Hazrat Muslim also. But on the way, just as he was leaving Makkah, he meets Farazdak and asks Farazdak, and we have discussed this before, oh Farazdak, what is the state in Kufa? Farazdak was a poet and answered poetically saying, Ya Rasulillah, the hearts of the people of Kufa are with you, but the swords are also drawn against you. We see that happening today. We see that happening today. The world today says in no equivocal terms that there was no martyr like Hussein. The world today says there was no pious person like Hussein. All Muslims, all non-Muslims say that there was no greater person who sacrificed for truth than Hussein alayhi salam. And yet when it comes to following Hussein alayhi salam, they have swords drawn not only against Hussein, but they have swords drawn against those who follow Hussein. They have swords drawn against those who do the madhab of Hussein alayhi salam. That history of 14 centuries ago is as true to us today as it was to Imam Hussein alayhi salam in those days. But Imam Hussein alayhi salam moves on his journey, and on the way, what he finds is he hears the voice of Muslim. When he hears the voice of Muslim, he turns around, and the Abbas alayhi salam was with him, guarding him at that time. He turns around, and what does he see? He sees Muslim being thrown down from the top of the government house, and as the Muslim saying to him, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Every salam to Imam Hussein alayhi salam is answered by him. He turns to him and says, Wa alayka salam ya Akhi, and sees exactly what happens. He turns around and says, Jazakallahu ya Muslim, may Allah reward you, O Muslim. And when Hazrat Abbas hears this, Hazrat Abbas turns to Imam Hussein and says, Mawla, what words are you uttering? What salam is this? And Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. What was Imam Hussein alayhi salam to do? He moves on at Zarud, he moves on, and this is at Zarud, and suddenly he sees Asalis coming from Kufa. He turns to meet them, but the Asali turns away. He turns the second time, Asali still turns away. He just wanted the news of his cousin Muslim. He had no other hopes. But that Asali did not have the heart to tell Imam Hussein alayhi salam that his cousin had been murdered by Ubaydullah. But when Imam Hussein saw he has turned twice, look at that akhlaq of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Despite his desperation, he moves back onto the straight path and moves on his journey. But behind him were two other people who had just done Hajj and were following Imam Hussein alayhi salam only to trace his steps. When they saw this, they felt sorry. They felt sorry that Imam Hussein could not ask the question he wanted to ask. And they admired the nobility of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. They turned their horses to this Asadi and went to him and said, you look like an Asadi. He says, yes. They said, we too are Asadis. Hussein wanted to speak to you. He said, yes, I could make out. I could make out the way he was turning to me, but I turned away from him. They said, why did you turn away from him? He said, what can I tell you? When I left Kufa, the body of Muslim was being dragged through the bazaar of Kufa, and behind the body of Muslim was the body of Khalid bin Urwa. With what tongue am I going to say this to Hussein? And he went away. Imam Hussein alayhi salam moved on, and he stationed that night at Thalabiya. These two people decided they must warn Imam Hussein and stop him going to Kufa. So they went to him at Thalabiya and said, oh grandson of the Holy Prophet, we want to privately or shall we give you publicly? We thought it was better to give you privately, but if you want us to give you publicly, we will give you publicly. Imam Hussain alayhi salam turns to his companions and says to these two visitors that I have no secret from them. What secret would Imam Hussain alayhi salam have for his companions? These are the companions he trusted to the fullest. He proudly said on Ashura Day, neither my grandfather nor my father nor my brother got the kind of companions Allah has given me. He says, I trust them to the fullest, tell me publicly. And they revealed the news that that man you wanted to speak to and turned away, we confronted him, and the news is he saw the body of Muslim being dragged in the streets of Kufa and being taken to the bazaar, and so the body of Harib ibn Urwa, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, immediately lowered his head and says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, and starts crying and turns to his people, turns to the brothers of Muslim, and what do the brothers say? The brothers say, Ya Hussain, so long as you are alive, we will fight with you. We will not let our sons live if even one drop of our blood is alive. And see who dared. They turned round to him and said, Mawla, what is the use of that life which we lead in which you are not living with us? We either die before you or we live with you. There is no third option on this at all. He turns now to the elder two sons of Muslim who were with him, again to Ibrahim, the elder one, and says, what is your view? And they turn round to him and say, Mawla, we will die with you. What is sons that are with him? I do not know what will become of him. Till now we don't know what has become of him. Of course he knew, but he would not reveal to those sons. You are the ones to live with the mother. The mother